Antics on Scottish Turf, written by John Eaton, narrated by Michelle Sloan. Episode 7. I knew that as I had heard John Arlott say so. Anyway, when we got off the bus at Yeovil, we found our way to Yeovil Football Ground and asked around about where the cricket ground was. They told us to go down the way to Westland Helicopters and look as they play on a field there. So, we went singing, only to find an empty field and no cricket. An old duffer told us that England played at the Oval in Surrey and not Yeovil in Somerset. That is why I stopped listening to John Arlott. Not so much Arlott as your lot, then, quipped Lady Helen. They all looked at Lady Helen. You are developing a sense of humour, Milady? Asked Alison, who had now got into the habit of calling Lady Helen Milady. What happened to Mary? Asked Pin. Chip thought for a moment. To put it in cricketing terms, she was not bowled over, and our relationship was left on the stumps. She kicked me in the middle wicket and told me to silly mid-off, or words to that effect. I think she was annoyed that I didn't pack any sandwiches or drink for her. I mean, I paid the train and bus fare, Pin remarked. Nothing like taking a lady for a spin. Finishing the conversation with his own cricketing whim. To add to the fun of the conversation, Chip handed over his Pin his favourite cricket song CD and asked him to play Cricket, Cricket, Cricket. Pin most certainly complied. They all sat back and just listened, with Chip pumping out the chorus line. All that, and we haven't yet got on the M5, commented Alison. I can't wait to get to Cullompton. By the time we pass it, we will have probably discussed the next World War and the end of civilization. Shall we just get on with it? Said Lady Helen. It's only 550 miles and 10 hours non-stop, and I'm driving. Okay, said Chip. We'll keep things calm and just occasionally chatter about things we have no control over. Good, remarked Alison. That means we will not speak for over 10 hours, which suits me fine. Radio 3 went back on. They all stopped talking. Lady Helen was busy moving her head and bobbing to the orchestral sound. Stars on Sundays, he whispered to Alison. Thanks, Jess, was her reply. Chip lay his head on Alison's shoulders as he tried to rest his eyes. Alison found herself nudging her arm upwards occasionally, disrupting Chip's shut-eye. Still, in the quiet moments, everyone was ready for the journey ahead. So what's the gig with the man, Mr. Trellis? What is he up to, and why has he left his wife and gone to Scotland? Asked Lady Helen. Just remind me again. I wasn't really listening to this morning. Too many things in my head, she said. There was a quiet moment when everyone waited for Pin to respond. I have read Mrs. Trellis's letter. Pin then opened the envelope. He read the woman's story. Mrs. Trellis. Her husband seems to have run off to the Isle of Skye, to a commune whose initials are SCOTS, the Sacred Clan of the Troon. What's that? Asked Alison. A commune is a group living situation where people share everything. Communes were popular with the peace-loving hippies of the 1960s. He continued. In Europe, a commune is a small administrative district, but in the UK, it's a way of life. Alison was flabbergasted at the useless information just blurted out of Pin's mouth. No, Pin, I wasn't asking you what a commune was. Lady Helen was asking about Mrs. Trellis, the SCOTS. What is that all about? Pin was slightly hesitant. I don't know, really. I never studied strange cults on the Isle of Skye. But in reality, S-Goddess is more of a cult than a commune, although it could be a bit of each. What is a cult, then? Asked Chip. Pin responded. A cult is generally a minority group that is not part of a larger and more accepted religion, and their beliefs tend to be more extreme and sometimes dangerous. Take the Jonestown cult. It ended up with 70-something dead, including cops, and as a religious group, they had enough weapons and ammunition to start a war. He went on. But this cult, is it a satanic cult? Who are the cult members? This cult seems to worship giants, fairies, blue men, and kelpies. These are well-known folklore and legends of the sky. But just like the Loch Ness Monster, some people seem to believe this odd ideology of giants or other second comings, a sort of fear with an expectation of a greater life after the coming. I think that the SCOTS may be gathering to discuss the resurrection of these iconic mythical creatures, to take back the island and create a revolution. Could be nasty. A bunch of nutjobs, then. Stated Chip. To you, maybe Chip, but to them, they are saviours of the soul, saviors of their sacraments, saviors of their island, saviors of humanity. They're nut jobs, repeated Chip. Apparently, said Pin, reading Mrs. Trellis's letter, her husband believes that the island is hiding giants, and Elevena and Angus MacLeod. Chip engaged Pin. Island of Skye. Sounds, Chip engaged Pin. Island of Skye. She says that her husband Sam believes that Skye was once home to giants who fought constantly, living on the Trottenish Peninsula. Pin read on. Oh, that's interesting. They lived off pigs, knees and adders. There are lots of those non-venomous snakes on Skye. Chip decided he had heard enough, said, and when they had leftovers, they mixed it all, made a snake and pig knee pie, and played snakes and adders after. Pin carried on. This cult also believed that a clan chief married a fairy, and they spent a year and a day together before she had to return to her world. She gave him the fairy flag, which was said to have magical powers and could guarantee victory in battle if unfurled.